Some reaction joining us from Capitol Hill, Senator Dan Coates. He's a member of the Senate Intelligence Committee. Senator, thanks very much for coming in.
Thank you.
You want to respond to what we just heard from your Republican colleagues, what Lindsey Graham and John McCain said?
Well, it sounds like the 2016 presidential race has now started. But what happened here and what's reported in this report that we spent hours and hours investigating and coming to the conclusion that this could have been prevented. There were pleas from those on the ground in Libya who wanted more security. That was denied. And this question about responsibility, I think, is an important one. What happened to the buck stops here? In this case, there are a lot of finger pointing elsewhere as to failures of the process and failures of the agency, et cetera. But no one really has stood up and said, I take responsibility for this. That's important. The American people want justice done here and closure to this issue. And we've not gotten there yet. And this report, I think, just reaffirms what a lot of us have thought, and that is there still are unanswered questions. Listen
to this exchange I had yesterday with the chair of the Senate Intelligence Committee, Senator Dianne Feinstein. Who should be held responsible for what clearly was a failure?
Well, let me say why the report says they're very likely preventable. And that's because there was adequate intelligence. I personally went through a stack like this of intelligence that forewarned, and we know there were a number of events, attacks that took place in the 6 months prior to Benghazi. We also know that there was discussion about added security. We know the ambassador did not want added security. We know there were concerns about Benghazi. We know there were training camps around that area. And it is something that I think the State Department has to really come to grips with.
But clearly she's not blaming the Secretary of State at the time, Hillary Clinton. She just issued a statement a few minutes ago saying statements on the Senate floor this morning intimate that the report assigns culpability to the former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton for the tragedy. This is patently false. Dianne Feinstein says, I want the record to be clear. I condemn any effort to use this report for political purposes. You agree with her, Senator?
Well, it shouldn't be used for political purposes. It will be, but it shouldn't be. What's at stake here is the fact that we lost an ambassador and 3 others that should not have been subject to this, particularly given the fact that they made pleas for support, and it was rejected by the State Department. But again, it is going to be looked at in terms of, well, who's in charge of the State Department, and is somebody going to step up and take responsibility for this? Just getting justice done and getting closure to this, I think it's important. That's an important component of it. But the chairman's views show that this is not a partisan issue. This is a bipartisan report signed by the chairman of the committee, who's a Democrat, and supported by Republicans. And it raises questions that I think need to be answered before we can put this to rest.
Well, what about Chris Stevens himself, the deceased U.S. ambassador? The report lays out a whole bunch of recommendations against increasing security that Chris Stevens himself put forward, and that he was willing to go to Benghazi, even though some others said it was too dangerous. What role did he have in this entire affair?
Well, that's a good question. Chris was known to be kind of an adventurer, someone who took the risk on behalf of his country and representing his country. Nevertheless, once you submit requests for support and it comes through the channel, I've served as a former ambassador, I know how it works, gets into the State Department, you need responses. And if the response is we're not going to do that, then I suppose the ambassador has some role in terms of deciding where he goes and where he doesn't go, but it doesn't dismiss the fact that these requests were made. This could have been prevented. I hope we learn lessons from this, but we also have to find closure to this and bring justice to those who perpetrated this. And then you had the whole video issue and the massaged talking points. So it continues the thinking and the concerns that there was some politicalization of the decisions made here. That's what needs to be put to rest, or it's going to continue to be a political effort and political responses.
The report, though, and you're a member of the Senate Intelligence Committee, does blame the intelligence community for the mistaken talking points, if you will, about that anti-Muslim video that may have sparked some of the riots outside that compound in Benghazi. When Susan Rice, the then U.S. ambassador to the United Nations, was on those Sunday talk shows, she was reading from some of those intelligence reports. Isn't that included in your own conclusion yesterday?
That is included and should be included. There's still some questions regarding how and who made the changes that caused Susan Rice to go forward and say what she did about this was all the result of a YouTube video, when people knew at that time that that was not the case. We struggled with that question to find out just how all that happened. This is going to go before the Senate Foreign Relations Committee. I think they'll be asking the same questions. But again, it points to the fact that this has not been resolved, and potentially could continue to be a political issue going forward.
Certainly could be. It's by no means over with yet. Senator, thanks very much for joining us.
Sure enough. Thank you.
President Obama makes an appeal